Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are having a good Thursday so far. I'm really excited for today's live. We're going to be talking about the nervous system. We're going to talk about food sensitivities. This is a topic that I'm asked about a lot, and I brought in my favorite nervous system therapist. So Grace is here with us, and she is getting ready to come on. So let me know where you're all coming in from, and feel free to share any details about your IC journey if you wish. Hey, Alex. Here we go. Hey, Grace.
Hello.
How
Hello.
are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. I'm actually very cold. It's like the world is ending over here. The wind is so loud. Last night we thought we were gonna like lose power and everything. It's crazy.
That's what my friends are telling me in Texas is happening too.
Yeah. I forget, where are you located again?
I'm in Boulder now. I'm in Colorado.
Gotcha. How's the weather there?
It's beautiful. Actually, I will say the past few days we were really windy too, so maybe it's just kind of like shifted. But yeah, it's wonderful. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am really excited to talk to you today. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
I mean, all of this started because I saw this question on Reddit about food sensitivities relating to IC slash the nervous system. So I thought this could be a really good topic for us to really dive into.
Mhm.
But before we do that, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So, as she mentioned, I am a licensed therapist and a nervous system coach, and I focus on helping people rewire their brains and regulate their nervous system with things like chronic pain, chronic illness, chronic fatigue, as well as generalized like holistic therapy. But that's my main focus, and so that's how Kelly and I connected. And it's been a wonderful connection, sharing clients, and also just really diving deep into, okay, how is pain happening in the body and what is the nervous system's role? So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and if you don't know, Grace and I did a podcast episode together a couple months ago. So if you go check out ICU, that episode is there. And then I went on your podcast. So there's lots of opportunities to hear us talk about things other than what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
And you also put together our nervous system series for Road to Remission, which I talk about so much because our clients love it. Like it was such a good resource that I'm really glad that we had you put together. So
Yeah. I love, honestly, I could talk about this all day long. Even when I put in Road to Remission, like I could expand on it even more. There's always more, which I'm glad we're doing these talks because there's always little pieces and nuggets and things that like, you can't get to unless the question's asked or we really dive deep. So yeah.
yeah, definitely. And you are coming to do a Q&A next week in Road to Remission. So love that we, collaborate this much together.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't know if you saw yesterday, I posted the polyvagal chart on my story. And I asked everybody, I took a poll of what zone they thought they were in, and everybody was like either in fight or flight or freeze. And then the only person who said they were in the green zone was Crystal, the IBS dietitian, who obviously also works with you.
Amazing. I love it. I was actually probably going to reference her during this talk anyway. So,
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay, amazing. So let's dive in. So the topic of the day is nervous system, food sensitivities, specifically relating to IC, when we can kind of tie it into that. So can you talk about how the nervous system can affect or potentially cause diet sensitivities?
yeah. So let's start here first with just truly how the nervous system works. And the simplest explanation I usually give people is that your nervous system is kind of like your communication highway between your brain and your body. And when we're talking about food sensitivities, the gut, right? So like at the top of your brain stem, which is kind of at the bottom of your brain, where your vagus nerve is, which we've always talked about too. And then it shares information all the way down your body into your muscles, your joints, your tendons, your cells, all the way down to your gut. And so it's just sending information back and forth. Like, I don't even know how many, a million signals all the time. So when we just even understand that, we can probably recognize, right, that anything we're ingesting or putting in our bodies has an effect on our nervous system. So just understanding that, and then recognizing that when we're in a stressed out place in our nervous system, when we're in that red or yellow, the fight, flight, or freeze response, think of it as like your body is on kind of like lock. It has this really small window of tolerance to where anything that comes in, it's probably going to be a little bit too much. So another analogy is basically like if your bucket is so full, anything that's coming in is just going to overflow and it's too much. It's like too overwhelming for your body and your nervous system. So let's understand that first. When we're talking about food sensitivities, there is actually a lot of research behind the idea of that gut-brain connection and how when you're ingesting things, your body's trying to do what it's going to do. And actually, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. This is what Crystal talked about on my podcast, the IBS dietitian, when she was saying that, when you're eating something, like your body wants to digest it and do what it's going to do, what it's supposed to do. But when there's a lot of stress in your nervous system, it doesn't have the availability to always digest everything. And so your brain is sending a lot of signals to your gut and vice versa. So when we eat something that doesn't sit very well, and I'll get to the reason behind this, the root cause, but first of all, when it doesn't sit well, then it reinforces to the brain, oh, something's dangerous. And then that food is categorized as bad, as dangerous, and it just reinforces the cycle over and over again. So let me see where I want to go with this. If our bucket is full and our brain is sending danger signals to our gut and then also vice versa, it just reinforces that. But even like the root cause of it, of why it would be deeming it dangerous, right, is I think kind of the whole question. Can nervous system dysregulated nervous system actually affect that? Yes, because when you have such a tight window of tolerance, there's so many things, and it's not just food, right? We've seen it with all different types of fragrances or whatever that we're putting on or in our bodies that are a little bit more, I'll use the word toxic, but I use it very lightly because I don't want us to go so obsessively into that in that area, right? So when that's happening, it just reinforces over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I will say this too. So there's a book called The Slow Down Diet by Mark David. And he references their research that shows the way that we actually think about our food, and I understand it and believe what's happening in our bodies when we eat literally changes how it's digested. So how could it not affect, right? How could the nervous system not affect? That book was so powerful for me when I read it during my journey, because then I realized there's so many times where I'm sitting here like, oh, I probably shouldn't be eating this. I shouldn't be eating that. Or maybe this test I took told me I shouldn't be eating X, Y, and Z, right? And so it's just lodged in my brain that food equals dangerous. And then every time I'm eating it, I'm like, oh, I don't know. Or I'm feeling shameful about it because I shouldn't be, but I am. Your food does not digest well. Your body's rejecting it because you're saying it's wrong. So I will stop there and pause because that was a lot.
No, yeah. It's all really great, and I have so many thoughts. Okay. I know from my experience working with people with IC, like there's so much food fear and stress and anxiety around eating that I can absolutely see how that can, create a stress response. And it's great that there is some research about how you're feeling when you're eating, your thoughts about food, and how it actually gets digested. And, I think when you were talking about like how the gut is responding, I think it's important to note that there are theories that the gut and the bladder do have crosstalk. They do communicate to one another. So that could mean that, these thoughts can be affecting your bladder as well. And I've seen that. I'm a big believer in the fact that if you're really stressed about what you're eating and you're afraid because your doctor told you to not eat chocolate, like there's going to be a physiological response that is rooted in your nervous system, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's shown time and time again. I know you've had experience with it. I've had experience with it. I work with many different people that have very much so been told what to eat and what not to eat. And, understandably so. I get it. Like that's the focus of a lot of care, because it's shown that there are certain nutritious values to food and things like that, of course. I think that where it's gone wrong is that it's just become like almost the answer. And then we get a little obsessed about it because how could we not when we're in so much pain or discomfort? We want some relief. So yeah, if not eating something is going to work, great. It's just not that simple. It's not how it works.
I
Our
think it's
mind and our body.
a way that we can control things too. We want to
Oh
control
yeah.
something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we feel so out of control in our symptoms that, yeah, definitely. Um, it's just not, at time and time has shown again, it is not the fix. It's not the only answer. It's not and I know you work with this a lot too.
Yeah. And the thing with interstitial cystitis is that the diet, the IC diet, really doesn't have a whole lot of concrete evidence supporting it for everyone. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of misinformation about it. Like there is like 10 to 15% of people with IC have what we call Hunter's lesions, which are these open wounds on the bladder wall. And so it makes sense that those people could be more diet sensitive. Like that actually makes sense. But when it comes to the rest of us, the 85 to 90%, that our bladders look healthy, they look normal on a scope. Like for us, it's kind of different. I think that there is a really big fear factor, and I think that our nervous system can be causing these diet sensitivities. But as you and I were talking behind the scenes, like there really isn't any research connecting like food sensitivities to bladder pain, bladder frequency urgency, interstitial cystitis. So that's kind of the frustrating part, but we're not surprised by that lack of research.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely a lot going on there, but that's why I talk so much about how many of my clients realize they're not diet sensitive, or they're not as diet sensitive as they thought they were. And the way that we figure that out is through an elimination diet, which, it is tedious, it is annoying to do for 3 months, but it's the gold standard of figuring out any food sensitivities. And again, it's really not as bad as people are thinking that it is. And you mentioned these food sensitivity tests earlier, and like people want this quick test that they can take to tell them what foods they're sensitive to, but these tests are not evidence-based. A lot of them are honestly BS, and they're going to cause a lot more food fear and restriction than is actually necessary.
Yes, and it happens so often. Um, and again, I will reference Crystal. She spoke about it really well and clearly when she came on my podcast around IBS and, well, just food sensitivities in general. But yeah, I mean, if we're shown this test, which again is not evidence-based and it is not valid, really, it's just kind of like, so for example, like when I took it, it showed a bunch of different foods that I was surprised about. And I was like, I eat these all the time. And there's actually a correlation with maybe I had a lot more in the past week or the day before, and it's going to show up a little bit higher in my body. Right. So that's not a reason for me to be sensitive to it just because I eat it more. So anyway, that's like kind of dispelling the test. Yeah, it just creates more fear. Anytime, I'll say this so loud and clear, anytime there's more fear, anxiety, yeah, I'll just say that fear or anxiety around our pain, our symptoms, our body, the more it increases a stress response in our nervous system, which then creates more inflammation, more pain, more X, Y, and Z, the list goes on. And I don't say that as a a way to make you fearful, just say like it's just more awareness of when that happens. Yeah, we can increase symptoms and pain and inflammation in our bodies. And so when we can decrease that fear and anxiety, then that pain doesn't have to be there as much. And so things like a test, like a food sensitivities test, or like a really strict diet that you're told is going to fix everything, just creates more fear and anxiety and like rigid control around it.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned that you had some food sensitivities in your past, and I know you've told me before that you overcame those. Can you talk a little bit about how you did that?
Yeah, it's one of my, I mean, sometimes the story blows my mind, honestly, because yeah. So I didn't really, well, I didn't really have a lot of issues with food in my journey up until a point. All of a sudden, I didn't recognize it was food at first, but I started having like really horrible headaches, almost like migraines, but not quite. And I couldn't figure out the trigger for them. Um, and then I found out that it was tied to food. Anytime I would eat, it would, within almost 10 to 15 minutes, I knew if something did not react well in my body, and it would send me into a whole tailspin. Realizing then later down the line, after researching, it was histamine reactions. So I was having histamine reactions in my body, and it increased so much to where I was probably down to like 5 foods for about a year. And in the beginning of that journey, I did do a food sensitivities test. I went down the whole functional medicine route, and some of it really did help, but I found myself getting so rigid around food to the point to where literally I was reacting to Topo Chico, like bubbly water. That like doesn't make sense, right? All the histamine foods that you know, Google a list of histamine foods, I was reacting to all of them. So that was a thing, but it just started increasing. It just expanded more and more because I was so fearful and rigid around it. Um, and really, I tried so many things. Nothing helped really. Something would take the edge off, but not really. And then when I was reminded about some of the brain training stuff I had been doing like years before with chronic pain, I started using that work. I started digging into just retraining my brain and telling my body basically that I'm safe. These foods are okay. It truly does not make sense for me to react to these. It is not, I had to believe it. I had to fully believe it. And I know sometimes this sounds a little, I don't know, out there, if you will. Just believe it and it'll work. It's not that simple, but the science behind it shows that, yeah, our beliefs change our reality and our bodies. So I had to believe it. I had to start retraining my brain. And really, every time I eat, I would find really soothing places and make sure that I wasn't as fearful or anxious around it. And within a month, I was able to eat anything after I did that.
I was going to
So I just,
ask you how long that took. That's so incredibly quick.
it is. And I will say this, I know it's quick. And honestly, that's even I mean, within 2 weeks, I had pretty much introduced most back into my diet. But I will say it's because I had training before that. I knew that that worked.
Mhm.
And so it was just kind of more like a click of, oh, right. Okay. My brain's just on fire right now. My nervous system is so stressed out. So if I can regulate those, then my body can feel safe. So once I started working on it, because I already knew that it worked, it it worked that fast. And so I always kind of hesitate to say that because it's, you know, not for everyone, but um, that's why I know this work is so powerful.
Yeah. And I wanted to share my experience too,
Yeah.
because I think it's important with me having
Mhm.
IC. So, back when my symptoms were at their worst when I was in college, I did seem to be sensitive to, you know, the common bladder irritants like coffee and tomatoes, spicy foods, alcohol, things like that. And I mean, once I started to figure out that like I had pelvic floor dysfunction, my nervous system was dysregulated, once I started identifying those things, being aware of them and working on treating them, my symptoms did start to disappear and so did my food sensitivities. And I honestly believe that my bladder, the nerves in my bladder wall were just really angry and irritated and sensitive. And I think once those kind of calmed down, I just think that everything else calmed down. Now I can eat and drink whatever I want. And for me, it was a couple of years to get here, and I did not know like anything about the nervous system at the time. And I actually believe that had I done the things that you are saying and like telling myself that I was safe, I really think I would have got there a lot faster. So I think that's really good to know for the audience that's listening to this. I know that you work with people one on one and in a group setting, you know, on things like this. Like, do you find that their timeline is more similar to yours, or is it super like individualized?
It's pretty individualized. Yeah. I will say this, that once you can, and usually usually food sensitivities is not the only thing we're working on, right? There's usually multiple other symptoms and things. And so once you can see progress in one area, whether that is first food sensitivities or something else, it gives your brain this kind of hit of like, oh, okay, this works. All right, then we can work in this area, just like I mentioned with my experience. And so once I see that working for someone, once they see it, you can see that aha moment. Like, for instance, last week, a person in my program mentioned that she had a migraine and she did some of this brain training and like 80% of it went away when she started doing it, just in that one instance. And so now she's so motivated to keep doing it with other things, you know?
Yeah.
So things like that, once you can kind of hit that first mark, it does accelerate the process. So yeah, I can't really give a timeline per se. It is individual, but that's what I see.
Yeah. I'm noticing that my clients, like the same thing, once they have that like aha moment where it clicks and they actually notice that they can have more than they realize, I think that's when they start like building up confidence and things just start falling into place and they're more successful. And, you know, it definitely is important to say like these things, especially with IC, like the research is so minimal that we just don't know. Maybe there is a trend that we're not picking up on. Like that is possible, but right now, like what I'm noticing is the diet sensitivities really aren't as common as doctors in our communities are making it out to be. And as a dietitian, I don't want people eating these super restrictive diets. I want you nourishing your body. I want you only avoiding the foods that you 100% know that you're sensitive to. So it's such an individualized thing.
Yeah. I will say this on a more just kind of general, I guess, global, if you will, stance that we do have, I mean, it is shown that in our Western culture, we have way more health issues and specifically around food and food allergies and sensitivities than many other cultures. And we have the most high stress in our culture. And so, you know, it all fits together. The more stress over long periods of time, right, chronically, we already know that. That's been shown for years that it impacts the body.
Mm-hmm.
So all these pieces fit together.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of wrap this up before, if anybody has questions, also feel free to ask any questions you guys have. If we have a few minutes, we can take them. But if someone's listening to this and they're struggling with IC and food sensitivities, and let's say they don't have Hunter's lesions, so that's kind of ruled out, like what would you recommend that they do? Like a small thing that they could do either today or this week to kind of get them on the right path to overcoming those food sensitivities.
Yeah. So I would say start learning about your stress signals. Start learning, look at whether you're in your program or not, but looking at the polyvagal theory and learning where you are, the red and the yellow zone, and learning how to get out of that. I know both of us have multiple resources on this. And
I think I can put a picture of it on the screen. I did it before.
Okay.
I don't know if I can do it when I have a guest on though. So maybe I can.
I've tried. I thought I could with a guest and I couldn't.
That's
I think
stinks.
I know.
Okay, sorry everyone, never mind.
But we both have, and actually I have a post specifically, actually, I created it after I did a guest live where I couldn't put the picture on there. So I have a post, I don't know if I can, link it or something, that outlines the red, yellow, and green zone in each zone.
Perfect.
So
we can
share
that.
Yeah, the first thing is being aware. Just being aware of your stress signals and how they affect you, and then learning how to shift more into the green zone on a regular basis. And okay, I'll say that's more general and yes, very important. But when it comes specifically to food sensitivities, really learning how to take the fear away from food. And I know that is a journey and it's a process. But when we put foods up on a pedestal, and not necessarily that they're good, well, whether they're really good or really bad, or we're not supposed to have them, we put foods up here, right? We're told we're not supposed to eat them. It becomes really triggering and fearful around them. So we need to take all those foods off the pedestal, see food as just neutral as much as possible. Now, obviously, take this with a grain of salt. Not really intended, but there we go, pun intended. So work on just becoming more neutral around food, knowing that it's not the only cause it's going to fix you, and that the more you can see it as not coming up, not the only answer to everything, basically. Like, it's just kind of a part of your life. You eat food because we need to, and we're human, right? But it's not the main priority of your health. Mm-hmm. It's taking the pressure off.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really good piece of advice. I see a question that says, if we do have Hunner's lesions, can those go away with brain training? So the thing is, we don't know, period, whether Hunner's lesions can go away with any sort of medical intervention or anything, non-medical. So, Grace, do you have any thoughts on that? You don't have to.
Yeah, I don't know enough. I only know what you've talked about in terms of Hunner's lesions.
I feel like brain training can certainly help decrease the additional symptoms that are, yes, the Hunner's lesions, the recommendation right now is to get them treated medically as soon as possible. And then I think that you could also, in combination with doing that, also start retraining your brain, working on regulating your nervous system. And I do think that it can help you at least get some extent of relief. Whether it will cure them or get rid of them, we don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, because this work will never hurt you. It will only help you in probably more ways than you can even imagine, shifting your life and your pain, your symptoms. Definitely.
Absolutely. Any other questions before we wrap this up? Grace, I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and doing this. I know you have a program. Are you currently accepting new clients?
Yes, we are. We are accepting new clients at this time, whether that's specifically for pain or general mind-body therapy. So, yeah.
And then you want to plug your podcast?
Yes. My podcast, Heal with Grace. Callie was on it, like she said. It was one of our first episodes, actually, and we talk literally all about what I'm sharing here, but also very much so into mental health, emotional health, physical health, the whole thing. So you can find it on Apple or Spotify.
Amazing. And if anybody is interested in, getting a higher level of support and guidance in terms of interstitial cystitis, and you want to have a touch point with Grace, we do have her, I would say probably like quarterly, to come into Road to Remission and do these Q&As where you can just ask her whatever you want. That is available. And then we also have that nervous system series inside of the program that we mentioned. So, I think it doesn't look like we have any more questions. Any last pieces of advice, Grace?
Go slow and be kind to yourself. The brain and the body do not respond well to criticism or judgment or fear or all of that. And I'm saying this from personal experience and still working on it, and just seeing how much a shift that can make when we're really able to treat ourselves differently. Our body settles, our nervous system settles. So it's difficult, especially around food sensitivities, because there's just so many you're told so many things about food, but we just have to listen to ourselves and take it as it goes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think that was a mic drop moment. All right, everyone. Go enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again, Grace, for coming on, and I will talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Callie.
All right. See you later.